Think about the last time you were in real pain. Not discomfort. Pain. The kind that makes every other thought in your head disappear. You reached for something. A pill, an ice pack, a doctor's number. The gap between the pain starting and relief arriving was probably measured in minutes. Now remove all of that. Remove the pills, the hospitals, the pharmacies. Remove the concept of anesthesia. Remove every tool that stands between you and the raw sensation of your own body breaking down. Put yourself in a forest 50,000 years ago with a broken tooth, a fractured leg, a wound that won't stop bleeding. What do? The answer most people assume is nothing. You endured it. You screamed, you waited, and either you got better or you didn't. That assumption is wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely, demonstrably, archaeologically wrong. And what the evidence actually shows is something that should make you rethink everything you believe about the minds of the people who came before us. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Karen Hardy at the Catalan Institution for Research and Advanced Studies published a study that changed the conversation about ancient medicine permanently. They had been analyzing dental calculus, the hardened plaque that builds up on teeth over a lifetime, recovered from Neanderthal remains at a cave called El Sidrón in northern Spain. The individuals buried there lived approximately 50,000 years ago. And inside the calculus, preserved in microscopic chemistry, were traces of two plants, yarrow and chamomile. Both are bitter, both have almost no nutritional value. And here is the detail that makes this remarkable. The research team already knew from earlier genetic work that the Neanderthals at El Sidrón carried the TAS2R38 allele, the gene responsible for detecting bitter compounds. These individuals could taste bitterness. They would have found yarrow and chamomile distinctly unpleasant to eat, and they ate them anyway. Yarrow is a natural antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. Chamomile has well-documented calming and pain-relieving properties. They were not eating these plants by accident. They were not eating them for nutrition. They chose to put bitter medicinal plants in their mouths because something in their experience told them it helped. That is not instinct. That is knowledge passed between individuals across generations. That is medicine. But the El Sidrón finding was not the first time archaeologists had seen this. In the late 1950s, Ralph Solecki of Columbia University excavated Shanidar cave in the Zagros Mountains of what is now northern Iraq. Inside, he found a Neanderthal burial. And around the body, concentrated in a pattern that could not be explained by a random soil disturbance, was pollen, a lot of it, from multiple plant species. Arlette Leroy-Gorhon's analysis identified yarrow, cornflower, hollyhock, mallow, and ephedra, a plant that contains ephedrine, a powerful bronchodilator and stimulant still used in modern medicine. Every single plant identified at the Shanidar burial had documented medicinal properties. They did not bury their dead with food or weapons. They buried them with medicine. Think about what that means. A species we spent decades describing as primitive, as limited, as barely conscious, watched someone they knew die in pain and chose to surround that body with the plants they believed could heal. That is grief. That is knowledge. That is care. Those are not the behaviors of a creature that simply endured pain and moved on. Now, here is where it gets harder to look at. Because the Neanderthals were not the only ones doing this, and some of what our own ancestors developed to deal with pain requires a moment to absorb. Across the world, in Neolithic sites in France, in Inca burial grounds in Peru, in ancient China, in Bronze Age Italy, archaeologists have found skulls, hundreds of them, with holes in them. Not the holes of violence, not the marks of weapons or predators. Holes that are clean, deliberate, and surrounded by new bone growth. The unmistakable sign that the individual was alive when the hole was made, survived the procedure, and continued living for months or years afterward. This is called trepanation. It is the oldest documented surgical operation in human history. And it was performed with stone tools, without anesthesia, without sterile technique, and without any of the infrastructure that modern surgery depends on. A 2018 analysis of over 800 trepanned skulls from Peru found that survival rates during the height of Inca surgical practice reached as high as 91%. By comparison, American Civil War surgeons operating with metal instruments and formal medical training achieved survival rates of only 46 to 54% on similar cranial procedures. The Inca surgeons, working with stone and plant-based anesthetics outdoors, performed better than trained 19th century doctors working indoors with steel. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of thousands of years of accumulated, transmitted, refined medical knowledge built entirely on observation and practice, and the radical refusal to let pain be the end of the story. What were they using to manage the pain during these procedures? The archaeological and botanical record gives us answers. In pre-Columbian America, the coca leaf had been in active medical use since at least 3000 BC. Ingested, dried, chewed, and applied as a poultice, coca is a potent local anesthetic. It is not a metaphor. It is the same plant from which cocaine, and subsequently the entire class of modern local anesthetics, was derived. They were numbing surgical sites with plant compounds that legitimately block pain signals. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean, research has confirmed that the opium poppy was being cultivated as early as the 6th millennium BC, almost certainly for its analgesic properties. Ancient Sumerian texts refer to it as the joy plant. Egyptian medical papyri from 1550 BC describe opium preparations for pain relief. And archaeologists working across Europe have found opium residue in vessels buried alongside the dead. These were not recreational habits. They were a pharmacological response to a problem every generation of humans has faced, and they developed it without a laboratory, without a chemistry degree, without anything except observation, trial, error, and memory. Memory is the word that keeps returning when you look at this evidence. Because none of this was individual genius. No single ancient human woke up one morning and decided to drill into a skull. No single Neanderthal independently discovered that yarrow reduces inflammation. These things were learned, taught, retested, refined, and passed forward. That is the same mechanism as modern medicine. The difference is not the mechanism. The difference is the technology available to the people using it. And when you remove the technological advantage, something striking happens. The gap between ancient and modern closes considerably. A Neolithic surgeon in France achieved an 80% post-operative survival rate. A 19th century hospital in Paris, during an era when germ theory was still contested and surgical instruments were rarely cleaned between patients, sometimes achieved a survival rate close to zero. The people operating with obsidian in open air, using plants that we now know contain genuine antimicrobial and analgesic compounds, understood something that took the modern world centuries to relearn. That the environment matters. That the plants matter. That what you put into a body before, during, and after pain shapes whether it survives. There is one more thing the evidence tells us, and it is the detail that, to me, carries the most weight. At El Sidrón, one of the Neanderthals whose dental calculus contained yarrow and chamomile also showed evidence of a dental abscess. That individual was in pain. Chronic, grinding, impossible to ignore dental pain. And they reached for something that they had been told or had learned or had somehow understood would help. That gesture, the reaching for something to reduce suffering, is the oldest human gesture we have ever found evidence of. Older than art. Older than organized burial. Possibly older than language. The drive to relieve pain is not a modern luxury. It is not a product of civilization. It is the thing that appears at the very beginning of the record, the first time we have any record of a decision being made. Before cities, before writing, before agriculture, a creature in pain looked at a bitter plant and thought, "This will help." And it was right, it did help. And somehow, across 50,000 years of extinction events and ice ages and collapsed civilizations and reinvented languages, that knowledge kept being passed forward, kept being refined, until it arrived in a laboratory, got a name, got a patent, and ended up in the bottle you reach for without thinking about it. That bottle did not come from nowhere. It came from a Neanderthal in a cave in Spain, sitting with a toothache, eating something bitter, because someone told them once that it worked.